Hello, welcome to Pre-Algebra with Miss Betsy. As you can probably see from the board behind me, we're going to be talking about the metric system today. And I am using as my text, if you'd like to follow along, Pre-Algebra for Christian Schools, published by Bob Jones University Press. It looks like this. I'm in the first edition. Second edition is not directly compatible with it. The order has been changed around. They've rewritten it a bit, but you still cover the very same basic material. And again, it doesn't matter, even if you have a Bob Jones University Press textbook, you can still learn how to work with metric system by watching this video. So let's go ahead and pray, and I'll have a lame joke and we'll get started. Father, I thank you for the rain this morning that I just saw as I glanced outside. It's been so very dry here, and we are so grateful for the rain that you're sending on our land. Father, I ask that you would help us to be attentive today and to apply ourselves to a concept that is a little bit foreigners to us as residents of the United States. Help us to comprehend a bit of how to work with the metric system. And I thank you that we can trust you in everything that we do. I pray in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. All right, lame joke for today. Who can tell me what it is that you get if two dinosaurs crash into one another? Let you think while I get a drink here. Of course, if you have two dinosaurs crash into one another, you have Tyrannosaurus Rex. So, today we have the metric system that we're going to be working with. And the United States is one of the few countries in the world that does not use the metric system as its basis of measure for length or for distance or for weight or for volume. So it's a bit of a foreign concept to us, but it's really a very logically based system. It is the language of science, so if you're going to, whether you go into a career that involves science, whether you're just looking ahead and knowing that you're going to be taking chemistry or physics or something like that, you've got to be able to work with the metric system because that's the language that they're going to be using within the sciences. And when you think about our English system, it's really rather random. You think, okay, what might be our base unit of length? Is it a foot? Is it a mile? Is it a yard? Where exactly did these numbers come from? Well, way back in history, in the English system, 12 inches is equal to 1 foot. Well, where did this name foot come from? Well, apparently there was some king, they measured his foot, and they determined that that was going to be the unit of measure, was the length of the king's foot. There are 3 feet in a yard. There are 1,760 feet in a mile. There are 12 inches in a foot. There are 36 inches in a yard. There's no common multiplier because the measurements that we have in the English system are somewhat random. Like there are 8 ounces in a cup, there are 4 cups in a quart, if I'm getting it right, 4 quarts in a gallon. Then we go into other measures of volume, and you have to memorize a bunch of different factors, a bunch of different multipliers so you can convert from one English unit to another. But what we have in the metric system is we have a base unit of length, and it's very similar to our yard, and it's called a meter. So the meter is the base unit of length in the metric system. And the base unit of length means that every other linear measurement, everything that you would measure like with a tape measure, is based on the meter. And how long is a meter? And you're even familiar with meters, those of you who run track in school, those of you who are really interested in watching the Olympics, or if you do competitive swimming, you might, instead of swimming 400 yards, you might swim 400 meters. Or there's 1,500 meter foot race that you do. All of this is the metric system. But a meter is slightly larger than a yard. A yard is approximately, with an adult, from the tip of your nose to the tip of your index finger. That's 36 inches. A meter is about 3.5 inches long. It's slightly longer than 39 inches. So that you have a visual picture of what a meter is. And as I said, it is the base unit of measure in the metric system. Over here to our right, this is a chart that I've copied from your book. Memorize it. I'm sorry, memorize it. You have to memorize the prefixes. You have to memorize what they mean. You have to memorize the relationship between the various types of measurements in the metric system, because it's like everything else. If you're a mechanic and I tell you that I'm going to say it wrong, but the compression in your valve is lower than it's supposed to be. If you don't know what compression is, and if you don't know what valves are, if you don't know that your lifter's not working, you don't even know what part of the car you're talking about, what part of the engine you're talking about. These little dashes here, these indicate that they're prefixes. You're going to take the prefix and add it to the base unit of length, which is the meter. So we have a kilometer. This is pronounced kilo, hecto, deca, deci, centi, and milli. And these prefixes are Latin prefixes, and you think, oh no, it's bad enough we have to speak algebra. Now we have to speak Latin. Well, they have the Latin prefixes here because kilo means 1,000. Hecto means 100. Deca has the K here, it's a hard K. Deca is 10. Deci is 1/10, that's 0.1. Centi is 0.01 or 1/100th. Milli, you think of a millipede having 1,000 legs, which it doesn't, but it has like a bazillion. A millipede, or milli, is 1,000th. Okay? So you're going to take your prefix and attach it to this base unit of measure here. So we would have something that looks like this. Let me make this smaller case here. If we put kilometer, if we put kilo in front of meter, we drop the hyphen because it's not, that hyphen just indicates that it's a prefix. We now have kilometer. What is 1 kilometer? Well, kilo means 1,000, so we have 1,000 times 1 meter. Over here, 1 kilometer, the abbreviation is km. 1 kilometer is the same as 1,000 meters. If we put hecto in the front, and I honestly have never heard that used any place other than a class. I don't know if they pronounce it hectometer or hectometer. You hear kilometer and kilometer. But a hectometer, hecto is 100. So a hectometer, 1 hm, lowercase, is the same as 100 meters. Again, I have never heard decameter used, D-E-K-A, but because deca is the Latin prefix meaning 10, we have that 1 dkm is equal to 10 meters. So this is what I'm talking about. We have a consistent multiplier going on that allows us to convert from kilometers to hectometers to decimeters to meters. We don't have to memorize 3 feet in a yard, 1,760 yards in a mile, 5,280 feet in a mile. We're going to see shortly that we just multiply by powers of 10, multiply by 10 or 100 or 1,000, or divide by those numbers to move back and forth amongst the different units of measure in the metric system. So you see we have decameter. We do have decimeter, but we also have centi. A centipede is a 100-legged creepy crawly bug. I don't know that they necessarily have 100 legs, but centimeter is 1/100th. So 1 centimeter is 1/100th of a meter. And you will see centimeter used constantly. Constantly, constantly, constantly. It shows up in medicine also. In medicine and in science and in measure, you have kilometer, you have centimeter, and you have millimeter, which is 1/1000th of a meter. And these are the most frequently used measurements, metric measurements that we have. So now what we have to do is learn how to convert back and forth between different measurements within the metric system. And we're going to see that there's a really simple way to determine how many, if you have 1,250 meters, how many kilometers is that? And you're going to see that it's very, very easy to discover that you have that 1,250 meters is equal to 1.25 kilometers. And let me tell you that right there you should say, oh wow, how in the world was I able to go from 1,250 meters to 1.25 kilometers? All I did was move the decimal point. Now let's imagine that I had 1,250 miles and I wanted to convert, let's see, meters, 1,250 yards, and I wanted to tell you how many miles that is. No way on God's green earth can I do that in my head. But I can very, very easily move from 1,250 meters to 1.25 kilometers, because the kilometer is what they use in the metric system, just like we would use a mile in the metric system. Okay. So let's go ahead and see what I'm talking about here. I have this chart written up here. Go ahead and memorize this. Understand what we're talking about. But see, all I've done is I've put them in order. And I forgot one. Decimeter, centimeter. I need to add millimeter in here. What unit is it that's our base unit of length in the metric system? It's the meter. The meter is the balancing point of our seesaw, if you will. We have 3 measurements to the left. They're getting progressively larger. We have 3 measurements to the right that get progressively smaller. We have kilometer, hectometer, decameter, meter, decimeter, centimeter, and millimeter. And you see that our abbreviation here for decameter has 3 letters in that, and that's because how would we know if it was a decameter or a decimeter? And I have in our green the arrow going to the right, and that says multiply. In purple, our arrow going to the left, which says divide. And what that means is if we want to move from a larger unit of measure to a smaller unit of measure, we're going to multiply. If we want to go from a smaller unit of measure down here in the purple to a larger unit of measure, that's when we're going to divide. And how do we know that kilometer is larger than millimeter? Because we have learned that kilometer means 1,000. So a kilometer is 1,000 meters, 1,000 yardsticks-ish, light end to end. It's about, a kilometer is about 6/10 of a mile. A millimeter, though, is 1,000th. And that means that if you have your meter stick, just like we say yardstick, assume this is our meter stick, so that means that there's 1,000 of these little millimeters, which I can't even begin to write 1,000 with this fat pen here. I could never do it. So kilometer is very large. A millimeter is very, very small. Now, let's look and see what we're going to actually do. This says, I'm going to read from our text. In the middle of page 94, it says, according to the chart of metric units, you multiply to change a larger unit to a smaller unit. This is our chart of metric units. You multiply to change a larger unit to a smaller unit. Moving the decimal point to the right for each step that you take is equivalent to multiplying by a power of 10. What are powers of 10? Powers of 10 are the same as exponents. If you have something that says 10 cubed, this is exponential notation. This should be a review. Exponent and base. And what exponential notation tells us is that you use the base as a factor as many times as you have the exponent. Factor is what you multiply together. So we're going to have 10 to the third. This is called a power of 10. 10 to the third, 10 to the fifth, 10 to the 27th. Those are called powers of 10. More vocabulary. My son said, "Mom, the vocabulary in math is worse than the vocabulary in English, and there's more of it." I said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, because if I ask you to, let's just presume you don't know what ambidextrous means, and I'm sure you all do, but if I were to tell you that my brother is ambidextrous, he can write with his right hand just as well as he can with his left hand." My brother isn't ambidextrous, but I'm just saying that. Or he can shoot with his right hand, shoot a shotgun with his right hand just as well as he can with his left hand. And I've got a son who can shoot a shotgun right or left-handed. And you would, from that, understand that ambidextrous means you can do things equally well with right hand or left hand. You're not right or left hand dominant. But with math, you don't use in normal speech powers of 10 and exponents and bases and exponential notation. So you have to learn the vocabulary so you understand what we're talking about. So this power of 10, it's the third power of 10, and it tells us that we're going to use 10 as a factor 3 times. 10 times 10 times 10 is 1,000. It's 1 followed with 3 zeros. Okay? Quick side little review there. Let's get back to our text. And it says, moving the decimal point to the right for each step that you take is equivalent to multiplying by a power of 10. And that's what makes unit conversion so simple in the metric system once the light turns on for you what you're actually doing. So example 1 says, write the missing number. 4.725 kilometers. 4.725 kilometers is equal to how many meters? You look at your chart and you find a kilometer. Okay, here's kilometer. And then you find meter. We are moving from left to right, from kilometers to meters. So we're going to multiply. How many spaces do we move from kilometer to meter? There's 1 space, 2 space, 3 spaces. So we're moving 3 spaces to the right, or we're moving 3 units to the right. That's equivalent to multiplying by a power of 10, 10 to the third power, which is 1,000. And what does this mean? When you multiply by 10 to the third, we're going to move the decimal point 3 units to the right. Three units, or let me just put 3 places to the right. Where's our decimal point right here? We're going to move it 3 places to the right. There's 1, 2, 3. So where's the new location for our decimal point? It's right after that 5. 4, 7, 2, 5. We don't need to show the decimal point because it's at the very end of the number. So 4.725 kilometers is equal to 4,725 meters. See how simple that is? An equivalent problem, as I'm looking for my eraser, which I can't find anywhere. An equivalent problem that we would be doing in English would be to say change 4.725 miles is how many yards. You cannot do that in your head because you'd have to multiply by 1,760 and then take care of that decimal point. See how easy this is? Okay, you're not convinced? Let's look at the next problem that we have. Next problem that we have, where we're going to multiply, is, let me pick one. This is in our skill check. This is problem number 3, and it says, write the missing number. 0.07 meters is equal to how many millimeters? See what we're going to have to do. Let's find meters. Here's meters. And there's millimeters. Are we moving from left to the right? Yes, we are. So we're going to multiply. How many spaces are we moving? 1, 2, 3. So we're going to multiply by 10 to the third. Since we're moving 3 spaces, this is what we're actually doing, but the way that we work this out is move decimal point 3 places to the right. All right, we're going to start here. We have to move our decimal point 3 places to the right. 1, 2, uh-oh, I don't have another place that I can move. You add a 0. 0.07 meters is equivalent to 70 millimeters. Let me show you right here what I did. I have 0.07. And we wanted to move that decimal point 3 places to the right because we moved 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3, to get from meters to millimeters. All I did was add an extra 0 on the end so that I can move my decimal place 3 units to the right, giving me 70 millimeters. That's all there is to this. As I'm throwing my caps on the floor. What time is it, please?
8:30.
Okay. And I will do breakfast. Now, what happens if we're going to divide? Well, look at our division here with the purple. We're moving to the left, which means if we're moving from smaller to larger, we're going to divide. What do you think it means if, when you multiply by a power of 10, you move the decimal point to the right? Yep. When you're dividing, you're going to move the decimal point to the left. So let's look at this example here in your book and see what they say. I'm on the top of page 95. To change a smaller unit to a larger unit, you divide. Tells us this right here. Moving the decimal point to the left, 1 place for each step that you take, is equivalent to dividing by a power of 10. Now at this point, do I really care if you understand totally what they're talking about when they say that you're dividing by a power of 10? Well, I want you to begin to grasp hold of what that means, but I want you to understand that it just means move the decimal point to the left to do your easy mental conversion. So here's our example 2. It says, write the missing number, which I don't even need to write down here. We are going to figure out, if we start with 5 millimeters, how many decimeters is that equal to? Millimeters, decimeters. We're moving to the left. We're going to divide. We're going to move the decimal point to the left. That's what this arrow means. When we multiply, we move the decimal point to the right. We divide, move decimal point to the left. If we start at 5, our decimal point is located right there, isn't it? We have to move that decimal point 2 units to the left. There's 1 unit. We have to move it 1 more space. Now we can move the decimal point 2 units to the left. And from that we see that 5 millimeters is the same as 0.05 decimeters. And if you want to go ahead, just like they do, anytime you have a number that is smaller than 0, smaller than 1 rather, you want to put that extra 0 on the front so it screams at you. It's 0.05 decimeters. Let's go ahead and try another one from our skill check. Let's do this one. Let's see, I want it to be smaller. 35 centimeters is how many meters? We are moving from a smaller unit. We're moving from a smaller unit of centimeters to a larger unit of meters. So we're going to move our decimal point in the direction of the purple arrow to the left. How many spaces? 1, 2. Going to move this decimal place 1, 2. 35 centimeters is 0.35 meters. And let's look over here at centimeter. It says that centi prefix there means hundredth. And sure enough, 35 centimeters is 35 hundredths of a meter. Isn't that cool? See, it all works together. Now let me do some more of these skill check because we have a couple different types of problems that you're going to have to do. Problems 4 through 6 ask us to write the missing units. So first, I have 470 meters is equal to 4.70 watt. Then I have 785 centimeters is equal to 78.5 watt. For problem number 6, I have 0.328 meters is equal to 328 watt. How in the world do I figure out what we're looking for? Well, we look at where the decimal point was originally, and we see how that location has changed. We see if the decimal point has been moved to the left or to the right. The decimal point would appear right here at after the 0. Now it's between the 4 and the 7. So what's happened? It has moved 1, 2 units left from the meter. It's moved 2 units left. So this has to be 4.70 hectometers. That's all that's involved here. Have your chart. And I have just made a decision right here. When you guys are doing this homework, use your chart. I want you to eventually understand and be able to pull it out of your head, particularly when you're in your science classes. But you're going to be able to use your chart as a cheat sheet. Okay? I'm not going to require you to memorize that. Now, you have 785 centimeters. What have they done here? Where's the location of this decimal point? What's happened? It started off to the right of 5, and it moved 1 space left. 1 unit left. 1 unit to the left of centimeters is what? It's decimeters. Finally, we have 0.328 meters is equal to 328 what? What's happened to the decimal point here? We've started to the left of 3. We've ended up with it to the right of 8. So you've moved 1, 2, 3. 3 units right. So if we move 3 units to the right of meters, we move 1, 2, 3, and we're at millimeters. Millimeters, and I think it's funny that I said this is decimeters. Centimeters, moved 1 unit left, it's decimeters. That's not the abbreviation for decimeter. The abbreviation, as I'm sure you caught, is decimeter. And I'll just look here just to make certain. Hectometer, decimeter, millimeter. It's just moving that decimal to your left if you're going to larger, or to your right if you're moving from a larger unit to a smaller one. Now, our final examples that I'm going to give to you are problems 7, 8, and 9, and we're going to replace with greater than, less than, or equal. And we have 100 meters, and our question here is that greater than, less than, or equal to 1 hectometer? And we have 100 centimeters. Is that greater than, less than, or equal to 1 decameter? And finally, we have 1 hectometer. Is that greater than, or equal to, or less than 10 meters? So what do you have to do here? To compare or combine, they have to be the same kind. You have to compare common units. So let's find out how many hectometers 100 meters is. 100 meters, we're going to move, meters, to get from meters to hectometers, we're going to move that decimal point left, aren't we? Our decimal point starts here at meters. We move it 2 spaces to the left to end up with 1.00 hectometers, which of course we have right over here. 100 meters is the same as 1 hectometer, so we use an equal sign. Centimeters, now convert this to decameters. From centimeters to decameters, it's 3 units, isn't it? So we're going to have to move this decimal point 3 units to the left. 1, 2, 3. So you have 0.01. Is that right? 0.01 decameter is less than 1, isn't it? And then you want to see the relationship between 1 hectometer and 10 millimeters. I'm sorry, 10 meters. Here's a hectometer, and here is a meter. Here is a hectometer. Here is a meter. What are we going to do? 2 spaces. We're going to have to move our decimal point here 2 places to the right. When we do that, we end up with 100 meters, which of course is greater than 10 meters. So that's the type of problem that you're going to be working with when you compare using greater than, less than, or equal to. You have to move your decimal point so that you're comparing the same units. Don't get stressed out too much on these. Don't make them harder than they are. If you get stuck, shoot me a text or we will talk about them on Friday. Have a great week and I'll see you soon.